Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of 2018, brought to you by the Nordic Football Podcast. I'm Steve Wyss, and I'm joined, as ever, by Jonathan Fadugba. How's things going down there, John?
Very well, Steve. Very well indeed. And we've got a bumper Norwegian show today, haven't we? I'm taking a back seat for this one, as we've got our Norwegian season preview. Only a week to go till the start of the new season. Are you excited, Steve?
Yeah, I'm really excited. I think I prefer the years where they start the league a couple of weeks later. It can be a bit cold, and the standard of football can be a little bit low when they have these years when they start it in mid-March. But yeah, really excited. We've got a bumper show lined up for you, like you mentioned. Basically, we're going to be talking about every single Eliteserien side, some talents to watch out for. We've got a special guest coming in the latter third of the show, Tom Dent from Bodo Glimt. So really looking forward to that one. And just overall, really, really excited.
So let's get into it. I mean, no time to waste.
Yeah, I mean, just firstly, before we go into the actual season prediction, I've got to mention our Patreon website, www.patreon.com/Nordic Football Podcast. We mentioned this on the last pod that we've got this set up now where you can donate to us if you so desire. I've got a shout out to our very first patron, Thomas Hermanson. Thank you very much for your support, Thomas. And we will strive to keep up the good work this year. So again, if you want to have a look at our Patreon page there and take a look, I'm sure there'll be quite a few links on Twitter this week from it. So yeah, we appreciate any support, basically.
Fantastic stuff. Not only have we got our first patron who's been awarded the Yondal Thomason Award there, hasn't he? Which you can check on the Patreon website. But we've also had a few questions this week on Twitter. So I'm going to analyze some of those as we move into the Eliteserien preview. And we're going to begin this season preview, bumper 2018 season's preview, with the top of the table, aren't we? And we're going to begin with a discussion on the teams that you feel will win the league. So the format for this podcast is going to be, Steve has very kindly given a predicted table from top to bottom. He's predicted every single position that he feels teams will finish in this season's coming Eliteserien. So if you are looking into your crystal ball and you're looking for some predictions, this is the place to be. Steve, I'm not actually going to start with your number one prediction as for who is going to win the title, because I feel that most people will probably be able to guess that. So I'm actually going to start with who you feel is going to come second. So we've got your full table here. Take it away on the team that you feel is going to be the biggest challenger to the current champions, Rosenborg, this season.
Yeah, well, I feel that Strømsgodset are going to be the number one challenger this season, John. If you go back to last year, their manager, Skullerud, I mean, he's won the league before with Molde, so he's broken Rosenborg dominance in the past. And I think in the second half of last season, they were one of the best sides. What they've done, they had a pretty good attack force anyway, but they've added pieces to this offense, which already contains the likes of Marcus Pedersen, Eirik Andersen, Basil Girardi. They've signed Moss from Aalsund, and I know he's sometimes been ridiculed in the past from certain people, but also praised in other quarters. Fundamentally, he scored 16 goals last season for a side that got relegated. I mean, I think he's a good addition to them. They've got Amal Pellegrino as well, a talent that's come from the lower leagues. They've signed Herman Stengel from Vålerenga, another good upcoming talent, and they needed extra reinforcements in that middle of the park. Defensively, they're pretty similar, but I think they've got so many options in defence now. If someone is out of form, they can roll back and rely on other people to chip in. I'm still not convinced in goal. I'm afraid Bugge Pettersson, he's 38 years old now. He's not one of the best goalkeepers in the league, but they're just going to have to get on with it there. So, yeah, I think they're the big challenges. I really like their offence. And if Rosenborg do have a flat spell, they can take advantage.
Right, well, looking at their history, they've won the league once in this current century. 2013 was the last time Strømsgodset won the title, and they've only won it twice in their history, the first time being 1970. What makes you think they are going to challenge? Where is their key strength in terms of what's going to make them the challenger? What's the biggest thing that will make them challenge?
Well, great offense, like I said. Got quality individuals there can make a big difference. They're usually so good at home as well, John, always. Historically, since they've come into this league, their own stadium is a fortress, and I would expect them to have... I think they had the best home record last year. I would expect that to probably continue. Away from home is the big question mark. If they can just make that step up, win more games away from home like they were doing in the second half of last year, then they can sustain more of a title challenge perhaps than others have done in the last couple of years. And finally, they haven't got any European involvement, which I think could be quite big come the summer. You've got the likes of Rosenborg, Molde, who are in Europe, and Sarpsborg as well. And if either of those sides go on a deep run, then they could get hindered by it. Strom's Godset, all they've got to focus on is the league or the cup if they still remain in it. So quite a few factors in their favour there.
Very good stuff. So, I mean, there's no surprises in guessing who your prediction for the title is. We'll move on to them now. They won the league last season by 7 points, and you have selected the multiple Norwegian title winners, Rosenborg, as your number one pick to win the title. Take it away on why.
Well, it's fairly obvious. They're the 1 to 2 favourites with the bookies to win the league. I hope I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure everyone hopes that they don't win the league. What people want to see in Norway is a close title challenge. There's a few reasons to think that that might happen this year because the opposition, the challengers, might improve their level. And Rosenborg, if they do, it's quite possible they could have a long, deep run in Europe in July, August time in the qualifying rounds. But in the last couple of years, they've always been well clear at the top of the table already, and it's not affected them. But if it's a bit closer, maybe it'll be much harder for them. Look, they've got such a big squad, quality, depth everywhere. They've added Alexander Söderlund, who was a bit of a flop at St Etienne, but he's going to score plenty of goals in this league. Nicholas Bentner, for all the criticism that people have given him, including myself, he's the best player in this league when he's on form. And if he's in the mood, he's gonna get loads of chances here. Samuel Adegbenro is too good for the Eliteserien. He's going to cause havoc everywhere on the wings there. And they've got depth everywhere, John. The only slight doubt perhaps is at the back. They've lost Jürgen Skjelvik to LA Galaxy. And maybe you could say defensively there's a couple of question marks. But just overall, it's going to be very hard for anyone to dislodge them. I just hope that someone can keep them close by the time the halfway point in the season is. And then maybe they can take advantage if they've got European, slip-ups.
Right, yeah. I mean, very quickly, the key man is obviously going to be Nicholas Bentner, isn't it? He, I think, led he was the top scorer in the league last season, if I'm right in saying. They've won the league the last 3 years running, so it doesn't look like anyone's really going to be able to stop them with their financial might. I mean, what's left to do for Rosenborg this season? What's going to keep their fans entertained? Is this just a run-of-the-mill season, really, or is there any kind of things to look out for? Is there anything fans can kind of point to and say potential weakness?
Well, they had a taste for Europe this season, and I think they want a taste of it again. It's going to be really hard for them to qualify for any of the group stages. The new Champions League format, I mean, I think it's virtually impossible for a side in Scandinavia to actually qualify for the CL groups now. But they could maybe get a run at the Europa League. I think in the actual Eliteserien, maybe the fans want to see them play almost like total football, to use a Dutch explanation there. Really look fluid right from the get-go and entertain from start to finish throughout the whole 90 minutes.
Yeah, very interesting stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to see past Rosenborg, isn't it, really, as you mentioned there. Maybe their European ambitions can trip them up to a certain extent. You've gone for third place, Molde, and we had a question on Twitter from Matt Ryan, who has asked, will Molde be amongst the medals again after Sigurd Ertsen has departed? What are your thoughts on Molde this season, Steve?
My problem for them last year was they finished second, but I think they were quite lucky in a way. They statistically scored a lot of late goals, and I think on another year they could have finished as low as maybe fifth or something like that. So they've got to do some improvement in terms of performances to maintain their second place. They've got Europe to look forward to, and that could be a problem. I think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer rotates the squad too much for my liking. There's just no settlement in terms of consistent 11s, and I just think in this league you need to be having a regular team if you can. Having said that, there's plenty of talent in the squad, young players, experienced players. The loss of Sigurd Ertsen's big. I mean, he was a big target man up front, 16 goals, a few assists as well. the hope is that new signing Daniel Chima-Chukwu can fill his boots. He's played for the club in the past and scored plenty of goals in this league, so there's no reason why he can't fill his boots again. Yeah, I think Mulder could be in the mixer. I mean, if things go well for them, I think there'll be players in the squad this year who improve their quality, so there's a chance they could launch a title bid, but I just had them down in that sort of third position.
And Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, the coach, I mean, do you expect him to see out the whole season? Will he have eyes on him from other clubs potentially abroad, or is he going to be there for the whole season?
I don't see how clubs abroad are going to be interested in him unless he starts winning the league again here. You know, as I say, from a tactical point of view, he's quite hard to predict because last year he was 3-5-2 a lot, but I think naturally, he prefers 4 men at the back. He should see out the season, but if things start to go a bit pear-shaped and he comes under pressure, then who knows?
The next 2 teams you've got to look out for in the upper reaches of the table this season in terms of your predictions, we've got Brann and we've got Sarpsborg. Now, Brann have brought in a player who you really have tipped in to look out for, and that is a player by the name of Gilbert Koomson, a 23-year-old at Brann. Let's start with Brann then and this player and why you think he'll be an influence, and what's your outlook for the team?
Well, Koomson is coming from Sogndal, who got relegated. In the last 2 seasons, 56 appearances, 10 goals and 15 assists in probably the worst and most negative attacking unit in the whole league. I think that's a fair effort. You know, when you're playing like that in a poor team, basically take him out of the game and you stopped quite a bit of Sogndal, but he still produced the goods. Now he's in a much better squad. He's going to have a lot more freedom. I think teams are going to have to focus on other players a lot more. And he's at that age, I think 22 years old, like you say, where he can just develop and become a really big star. My big problem for Brann has been squad depth and attacking abilities in the last 2 years. They've done really well the last couple of years. They're a really well-organised team. Got some fierce competitors in the squad. Frederick Horgan in midfield, absolute general, like someone mentioned on Twitter to us. And they're going to need another big season out of him. Always going to have a solid defence. Problem last year was when they got injuries and the squad couldn't cope. They seem in a little bit more better condition that way now. They've added a couple of offensive pieces, and I think they're going to be a force. Can they launch a title bid? I don't think so, but maybe they can do. They haven't got Europe to worry about this year. If they can stay injury-free, they're going to be really formidable to beat at home. They always are. And, I expect Brann to go pretty well, to be honest, John.
Yes, and then moving on, the one team whose list of transfers reads more like a sort of Norwegian folk novel or something like that. I mean, you've got Sarpsborg there, whose transfer business seems to go on for pages and pages, as I've just said. They've lost a talent focus that we had last season, Sigurd Rosted, to Ghent for something in the region of £1 million, it seems. What's your outlook for them? That's a huge level of kind of squad regeneration. Can they do much?
Well, there's still plenty of talent in the squad. They're well coached. They're a club that you feel like they're on the up. But look, when you have a dozen players come in and then a dozen out, it's just obvious to me that you're not going to be able to settle properly for a few months, no matter what league you're in the world. And this happened 2 years ago with Sarpsborg, actually. They had loads of new players come in and loads moved out. And they started the season slowly. This is my worry for them this year, John. Are they going to get out of the blocks quickly enough? They've got Rosenborg first match. It's not a great time for them to be facing, to be honest. It takes them until the summer to really get in full flow. By then, they might be too far out of the title mix. And maybe sort of long-term next season might be a better option for them. They're also in Europe, which might take some adjustment for them in the mid-season. Still plenty of players to watch out for at the back. Bjorn Inge Utvik may well be Sigurd Rosted's replacement. Harmeet Singh's a good signing. Mikael Agger up front. Ronnie Schwartz is one worth watching for as well. So, there's still talent, but I just see them regressing, to be honest, John, a little bit because of the likely slow start.
Good stuff. And looking at them last season, as you mentioned, they're needing a quick start. They actually won 3 of their first 4 games last season. One of them 5-1, in fact, as well against Christiansen. So maybe they need to come out of the blocks, which they did until a loss against...
Yeah, they definitely need to come out of the blocks quickly, and that's my concern. Can you do that when you've got a squad that is regenerating, It's that's the big question.
Looking further down the table, then we've got your top three there being Rosenborg, Strømsgodset, and Molde. Let's look at that clutch of teams that you selected to be kind of mid-table, starting with, I suppose, Stabæk, Haugesund, and Lillestrøm, and Odd. Those are the four teams you've got as a mid-table kind of consolidation.
Yeah, well, I'll start with Odd, and they've got to improve their goal scoring. They only scored 27 goals last year, John, which is ridiculously low. Their top scorer, guess how many goals he had? 3. 3 goals is their top scorer, which is mad, isn't it? Just to put it in perspective, the next nearest low-scoring teams were 33, 35 goals, and then 38 goals. So they're about 10 goals worse than most of the league. I don't believe they've got enough players to improve their goal scoring quickly, but there is a midfielder to watch out for in the Odd ranks. Marcus Kassa, I really like the look of him, a youngster to keep an eye on. Haugesund, they've got exactly the same problem as Odd. They can't score goals, and again, the big question mark: can they find enough this year? I'm not convinced, and they're going to rely on their defence too much again. Again, can you do it? I'm not sure. Stabæk should be all right. Maybe there's a chance they could get sucked into a relegation battle. But I think they're really well coached by Tony Ordinas. They've got some great young talent, one of the youngest squads in the whole league. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's the youngest completely. But they conceded a lot of goals last year, and I'm pretty sure they'll concede a lot again this year because of the style that Ordinas plays. Might leave themselves too open. But they'll be an entertaining team to watch. Good one for the neutral Stabæk. Lillestrøm, they're going to be direct, in your face, physical, long ball, but they're going to be hard to play against because there is some talent in there. They won the cup last year, so they're in the Europa League. They're going to enjoy that adventure, hopefully, in the summer. But maybe it might affect their league form a little bit. I see them right bang in the middle of the league, actually, Lillestrøm. They're sort of like the average sort of side in the Eliteserien, John. So, yeah, I think all those teams look to be around mid-table for me this year.
Great stuff. And then the one team we've got remaining in the table, in that sense of mid-table, you have Vålerenga down as the team you've predicted to finish in 6th. Now, last season, there was a bit of a bizarre incident with Ronnie Dealer stripping naked, I think, after a team's win. Are we going to have any sort of naked antics this season? And what's your outlook for Vålerenga? We actually had a question from Matt Ryan again. He asked, are they the team who could maybe be under pressure? Would the manager be under pressure if Vålerenga aren't around European qualification? Give us your quick views on the Vålerenga.
Well, the naked truth is that, yes, he will be under pressure if they don't deliver something this year. He's promised to get him in the medals within 4 years, which I think is a bit conservative, really, for a club like them. Look, pre-season hasn't gone great for them. They just haven't clicked. There's a few injuries knocking about. They've got some good signings as well, like Sam Johnson up front. I think he'll go well. Like I said, Samada could be at the back as well. I mean, Nori should go all right. But I think they're going to be too inconsistent to launch a title bid or even a medal bid. So I think there's a few concerns about Vålerenga. But yeah, the expectations amongst the fans are going to be quite high. So, yes, there will be pressure if they don't start, to be consistently in that top 6, really. They've got to try and aim towards a medal. I'm not sure they can.
Yeah, and reading Ronnie Dyler's comments actually on the eve of the season, he said that he's got a younger squad which has got a lot more running power but less rhythm in it. He feels that they'll be better this year, but they must take it step by step, and said he'll be disappointed if they do not get in the top 6. Is that ambitious enough? I mean, he's also said they aim to be Oslo needs a team at the top of Norwegian football. Is it ambitious enough to only want to be in top 6?
I don't think he's nowhere near ambitious enough for a club like them, John. He's already offering excuses, if you ask me here. It's pretty pathetic, actually, to say that he's disappointed that they won't be in the top 6. They've got to be aiming for the top 3 or 4, let alone the top 6. If they finish outside the top 6, he's out of a bloody job for me. I mean, this is a big club, John. They're in the capital city of Norway, and they've won titles in the last decade. And more needs to be done. This is a project that he's saying is 4 years just to get into the medal places. He needs this year to definitely make a big improvement. And I just don't like it when managers pre-season are as negative like this when you're at a big club. I remember when David Moyes started at Man United. He was starting stuff off, wasn't he? Early doors. There's not enough positivity coming from this camp, in my opinion, and this is why I'm concerned about Vålerenga this season.
Well, I think it was Mark Twain who once said, "Clothes make the man, but naked people have little or no influence on society." So a tough one for Dealey there, according to Mark Twain. Let's move on now to the relegation battle, and we're going to be joined by a special guest in part 2. That will be coming up now, shortly after this very quick break. We now move on to the relegation zone, and we are going to talk about the teams who Steve feels may well be in trouble this season, or who have come up and will be fighting to survive. And we're delighted to be joined by a special guest on the show, who is Tom Dent, who is a member of the newly promoted side, Bodo Glimt, who I'm sure you're going to correct me on my pronunciation there, but Tom, welcome to the show.
I don't feel I can correct an Englishman on an Englishman, so don't worry too much on that. But thank you very much for the invitation to come on. Really looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, happy to have you on the show, and yeah, thanks for obviously listening. I know you're a listener of the show, so it's great to get you on board as well. I mean, let's start with just very quickly your situation. I mean, I think you're right in saying that you're the under-18s academy goalkeeping coach. Is that right? Just tell us
a bit of both. So my job with Glimt is kind of split into two. So I have the goalkeeper side is one half of my job. So in Bodo Glimt we have teams all across the ages from 6 down to the first team. But we have what in England you would class as academy team from under 13s up to under 19s. So all the goalkeepers that are in that age bracket come under me in terms of the syllabus and in terms of the sessions they have. And then the other half of my job is the under 19s team on the second team, which is essentially the same team, have 3 coaches in the coaching staff. And those 3 coaches are myself and 2 colleagues. And I have the under 18s team as a head coach on a match day. So I kind of have both the goalkeeping side and the team side. And then I have a little bit with the first team when the first team goalkeeper coach is away, as he's one of the national goalkeeper coaches. So I hop in there when he's away on the national team breaks.
So how did you get into, I mean, just I suppose the first place to start is how did you get yourself in a position out there in Norway? What's your history, your background? I mean, it's a really fascinating position to be in. Tell us your pathway to that position in Norway and, your experiences to date.
It all started back in 2011. I was studying at Brunel University in West London, and alongside that I was working for Fulham, the Fulham FC Foundation. So we did a lot of holiday schools, summer camps, those sorts of things. And while I was there in the summer of 2011, a Norwegian was over there with his son and his son's best friend, and they were there partly to do the football school, partly to see the sights of London, and also partly to meet the Riise brothers. John Arne and Bjørn Helge Riise were both in Fulham at the same time for 1 year. It was just before Mark Hughes took over as manager. And we got talking, and I had the kids for a couple of sessions. And at that time, I knew nothing about Norway, nothing about the language, nothing. So I made the sessions around them. And he was really happy with the way that I sort of looked after them. And so invited me out to go and see Norwegian football. So I went out the following summer with a friend of mine, and we went to a lot of the Oslo clubs, Stabæk, Vålerenga, Lillestrøm, and then we went to a local club called Follo. And while I was at Follo, it was the first time the coaching staff sort of got to know me, and were the first coach to take an interest. So we went out a few more times, and then after I graduated in 2012, I was offered a position as very similar to what I have now, where I had the goalkeepers, but from the first team all the way down, and also as an under-14s head coach. So I moved out there completely on my own in 2013, not really knowing what the hell I was doing, but thinking this is fun, this is a full-time football job, and this is going to be fun. Had 3 really good years there, met a lot of good people. And then one of the people I met happened to be an Irish coach called Gary Hogan, and we got to know each other very well. And then in 2015, he got the manager's job of a club called Bodo Glimt, who play just outside Trondheim. So I spent 2016 as an assistant manager there for the first team. Had a bit of a fairy tale cup run, but we had a bit of not struggle in the league. We would have been a safe mid-table side, but they had a strange league restructuring, which meant that the team actually got relegated. And Gary unfortunately lost his job, and though I saw out the season, and then completely out of the blue, I got a phone call from Bodo Glimt offering me the position I have now. So I moved up here in November 2016. In fact, the day I signed was actually the day we lost to Ian Birchnell's Viking at home, which was the last home game of the season in 2016. And then I've been in Glimt ever since. So I spent the whole season here last year, and I have this year and hopefully next year with Glimt, and then we'll see where the adventure continues.
Hi, Tom. Great to have you on board here. What can you actually tell us about Bodo Glimt as a club in general and the recent history surrounding it?
The club itself is quite a famous club in Norway, simply because it's one of the first teams that came from the north into the league structure in Norway. Previously, it was very much regionalised. We're talking way back in the 60s, but it's almost had a lot of history for producing really, really good players and having a certain brand of football. And they've even played in Europe. The last time they were in Europe was in 2004. So they've played in the old UEFA Cup. And then since then, it's become a bit of a club where players have gone on as a stepping stone between Glimt and into the wider footballing world. So if I give you 2 recent examples, Stoke City signed a player, Bodo Glimt, from Galatasaray in January transfer window, and he was actually with us in Glimt in 2013. And also Alexander Sørloth, who recently signed with Crystal Palace, he was also on loan with us from Rosenborg in 2013, and that was his kind of breakthrough season. So it's a very famous club for players to progress their career, whether they've come through the academy or whether they've come signed by the club and gone further into the footballing world. And it's always had a very good reputation in terms of young players, which is something I'm sure we'll touch on a little bit later. But it's a very big small club, if that makes sense. It's nowhere near the size of Rosenborg. It's nowhere near the size of Molde, but it has its standing. It deserves to be in the Eliteserien, if you can say that.
Tom, you looking at the history of Bodo, they've won the league. They've been runners up 3 times. Most recently, I think in 2003, and he won obviously the title last, in the season just gone, to move up to the promotion to the Eliteserien. You mentioned the young players, and that's a big focus of the club, and that's a sort of key philosophy of the club. Who are the players that we should look out for this season? Are there maybe 3 key players you could immediately highlight to listeners who may be, not so familiar with Bodo moving into the Eliteserien?
I think there's, from a youngster's point of view, there's a lot actually of exciting players coming through. It's a really good time. You have a couple that have already sort of made small steps, in terms of, you have Fredrik Andre Bjørkan, who plays as a left back. He's coming into his first full pre-season since he's been in the first team. He's looked really strong. So if he can play 30 games, he can really push on. We have Jens Petter Hauge, who is only 18 years old, but he was the top assist, had the top assist in the Obscurity last year with 13. And made his debut as a 16-year-old in the Eliteserien the last time we were in the Eliteserien. And we also have a 17-year-old youngster, just turned 18 actually, Håkon Evjen, who was recently called up for the national team for the year above his age, and has also played a lot in the pre-season, played a lot on the wing, can also play as a left back and on the left side in the central midfield. So there's 3 straight off the bat that that can really make an impact this year from a youngster. We also have Patrick Berg, who's been in and out of the team. He's only 20, 21. We also have William Arne Hansen, who's also only 19, just turned 20, who can also be something exciting. So there's five players straight off the bat who can really make an impact this year.
Yeah, Tom, I mean, as Bodo Glimt as a club itself, I mean, what sort of general ethos would you say there's there? You know, club vision and things like that.
They have a really strong identity. They really like to identify themselves with their North Norwegian roots, which is very hardened, very straight talking, a bit like it is in the north of England, actually. There's a lot of jokes, obviously, about people from Newcastle who are very straight talking, very brash, very to the point, and there's a lot of similarities in that sense in the people from the north. But Glimt have a very strong playing style, non-negotiable 4-3-3. They have a very strong identity of each position in that 4-3-3. But they also have a very, not strict, but they have it outlined in terms of how many players in the squad have to come from the north of Norway, how many players in the squad have to come from their own academy, how many players from the team below need to be training on a consistent basis with the first team. So there's always a pathway from the second team right up to the first team, and then
how many is it?
Stages. The squad basis is that there has to be two goalkeepers, 15 fixed players, 3 players on top of that who have to be their own players, and then another 2 on top of that who have to be training with the first team regularly but play for the second team. So you're looking at around probably a quarter of the squad have to be their own sort of produced and young, and the conveyor belt is whirling round rather than just throwing him in there when they're ready, shall we say.
Fascinating. I mean, what you mentioned there in terms of the club philosophy and the club vision, for you as a goalkeeping coach, how does that affect you? Does that affect you in any way? I mean, are you responsible or part of the recruitment policy at the club, for example? Do you scout goalkeepers, that kind of thing? Tell us about your own particular role, and also what's the lifestyle like, coaching abroad, you know, that kind of thing. What's it like living in Norway?
If we take the first one first, Glimt have had a lot of history of producing players, but goalkeepers isn't necessarily one they're particularly well known for. We currently have 3 not only North Norwegian goalkeepers, but actually 3 foreign goalkeepers. So we have a Canadian, Simon Thomas, we have a Brazilian, Ricardo Fredrick, and we've just signed a Serbian, Zoran Popovic. The goalkeeping coach here, Jonas Kulstad, is played a lot of time in Glimt. He was here for many years and played X amount of games. But alongside that, there was an Estonian goalkeeper. So you're having to go back into the mid-2000s before there was a regular North Norwegian goalkeeping trio or double act, call it what you want. So I've always had the attitude that I wish to change that. It's been the same in clubs in different parts of Norway, because the goalkeeping side isn't quite as developed as a country as the other sides are. So my role basically is to, as you say, it's less about recruitment at the moment and more about putting in place structures and development programs and those sorts of things, whereby 1, we can identify goalkeepers a bit more, but 2, education for coaches about goalkeepers and education for goalkeepers about goalkeeping is further advanced than what it currently is. Myself and Jonas speak a lot. So in terms of goalkeepers for the juniors and for the first team, we speak a lot, and we each have our own input on those sorts of things. So it's quite a varied job. As for the lifestyle, it's quite strange actually, because there's a lot of stories in Norwegian media at the moment about the season starting this weekend, and they're not sure the weather can handle it. It's actually really nice weather up here in Bodo at the moment. I say really nice. It's still -6 with a wind chill of about -4, so it's not it's not exactly we're not talking Spanish nice here, but it's been very little snow actually the last 2 months or so. So
when you say there, just to clarify, that's the sporting director, I believe, when you were talking about the recruitment side of things.
Osman Björken, yeah, he's the new sports director, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So from a goalkeeping coach's point of view, you know, quite quickly, maybe putting you on the spot a little bit here. Firstly, who would you say maybe is the, you know, from your point of view, just to get an idea of your own flavours, Who would you say is the best goalkeeper in the world, or the top sort of 2 to 3 goalkeepers? If you had a 1, 2, and 3, maybe.
I have to say, whether I think he's the best is a different question. My favourite goalkeeper is Gigi Buffon. He's been my favourite since I was a kid. My best goalkeeper at the moment, I think it really depends on what you consider to be the criteria to be the best goalkeeper. I think the best shot stopper in the world is David De Gea. I think there is no question on that. I think the most complete goalkeeper is Mark ter Stegen at Barcelona. And I think the most offensive goalkeeper, we're talking the Neuer type, is Ederson at Manchester City right now. I think he's so offensive, he's so brainless in what he tries to do, but he gets away with it because he takes the risk. So if I was to rank them, I'd probably say ter Stegen, De Gea, Ederson.
So ter Stegen number 1.
Yeah, I think he's the most complete right now.
And in your own region, who should we look out for in Norway this season from a goalkeeper?
In Norway, I've heard a lot of good things about Brønd's new goalkeeper from Austria. I've seen a little bit from him, and I think he's really, really good. In terms of Norwegian as Norwegian, I've got to try and think through the list now of who actually classes under Norwegian. There's not that many floating around Norway at the moment. Rosenborg's 2 goalkeepers are brilliant. Andre Hansen is probably the best in Norway. Perhaps not the best Norwegian, but he's definitely the best goalkeeper in Norway. And Arild Osbu is a really good number 2. I've been really impressed with Anders Christensen since he went to Sarpsborg. I was a little bit unsure because I watched him when he was at Bryne, and I thought he was decent, but I wasn't sure if he could make the step. But I've been really, really impressed with how he's developed and how he's taken on the Eliteserien. And then the last one probably is a toss-up between Brodveld at Haugesund and Sondre Rosbach at Odd. 2 very different goalkeepers, but very, very effective in what they do, and still very, very young. So they've got a lot of space where they can further develop, I think.
Yeah, I've got Brodveld down as one of my 10 to watch at the end of the podcast, actually. All right, on to Bodo Glimt this season, Tom. How's pre-season gone? What are the ambitions for the season? And I'm going to have to ask you a prediction for a final finishing place.
Pre-season's been very good. We paid a little bit for our historic run at the end of last year. We had something like 10 groin injuries, all of the same type. They were all kind of like overload injuries. So it meant then that there was a lot of work done in November, December to overcome those problems. But it then meant that when we started back in January, we had quite a thin squad in terms of fully fit players. The nice thing about the timing of all of that was then that everybody was built up at the same rate. So we're coming into the point now where the season begins in less than a week, and we're pretty much at full strength. We had a bit of a terrible bit of news on the weekend that Onde Kupen is most likely out for the season now with a cruciate, which is really bad timing for him, especially as he's been really good in pre-season. But other than that, we're looking in good shape, and I think the performances in the pre-season games have been very, very good. We got a strong result away at Molde. If you look at the results, had 2 good games in Marbella against Sandefjord and Start. And obviously the local derby, if you can call it that, when it's 400 kilometers away against Tromsø last weekend, ending in a 4-1 win, is obviously also a very positive result going into the season. So it's the club's mantra, I guess, or their aim is to become a stable Eliteserien side. They're very much a yo-yo club at the minute if you look at recent history. So I think if you ask anybody in the club, myself included, the first thing is survival. I think if you look at it, and I think we'll talk about the other top teams a little bit later, I think that the potential to be a lower mid-table side is very achievable, if not higher mid-table. I don't think we're going to do like Brann did a couple of years ago when they won the league by a margin and then went on to finish second. I don't think that's realistic. But I certainly think that we are in good shape to survive and maybe a little bit more.
Great stuff. So yeah, that is the inside information into Bodo Glimt from Tom Dent there, and really good analysis and take on the situation. Tom's going to join us now for a bit of talk about the relegation battle and the other teams. I'm sure there's a lot of insight you can bring to the other teams involved. So let's move on to, I think, what is a bit of a local rivalry in terms of Tromsø. Am I right in saying that, Steve?
Yeah, it's the derby of the north when these two teams play each other, and I'm sure Tom would agree it's probably the biggest match of the season for both. Yeah, Tromsø. I mean, they're. I've got a few worries about them this year, to be honest with you, John. They've been selling players, and they've had to because they've got a few financial worries up there. Mikkel Ingebrigtsen's gone. They've lost Thomas Olsen, a couple of others as well, but they're not really replacing them with anyone enough. I mean, they've got Tom Hogley. I mean, experienced player, but he's about 34, 35 years old now. And all right, you can't write off old players in this league. I mean, players like Frode Kipper are still going at 40 odd at Lillestrøm, but just got a few concerns about them, John. I mean,
who have they bought and who have they lost?
Mikkel Ingebrigtsen's the big loss. Thomas Olsen was the top scorer last year for them. The squad looks really thin at the moment. I think if they have injuries, they're going to be straight into youth players. I've got them down for 12th position, but I think if they lost their manager, Simo Valakari, who did a superb job last year for them, he came in mid-season and kept them up, and he played a lovely brand of football, sort of 3-5-2 formation. But I could just see there being a problem with him being unsatisfied at the club, and maybe even he could leave them mid-season. So I've got them down for 12th, but it would not surprise me if they were deep in the relegation battle.
Tom, thoughts on that, or would you prefer to sort of no comment that one, considering they're your rivals?
No, I'm allowed. I must comment on that one for the exact reason that they are rivals. No, I agree with everything that was said. I think initially they went very much under the radar, and I think they had a very good end of the season last year. I think they'll be disappointed that they haven't been able to maintain what they had a little bit more. But I think that, like you say, I think they have a few issues, and I think they're going to be scrambling, I think, for signings near the end of the window, which is really not what you want to be doing. So I think they're going to get sucked in. If you'd asked me probably a month ago, I would have said they would probably be okay. But having seen them play at the weekend, I'm now really unsure.
So it's looking bad for Tromsø then from our expert analysts here. Let's move on to Start, to another newly promoted side. Steve, we'll start with you. They've got a new manager in Mark Dempsey, fairly highly regarded. What are your thoughts on Start? I mean, a few people kind of said that they might be a little bit of a dark horse, or is that kind of overblown? What are your thoughts, Steve?
I agree. I think they are a bit of a dark horse. I think of the 3 promoted teams, they're most likely to finish the highest. I've got them down. I've got them penciled in for 9th. They might do it a little bit better than that, really, as well. I mean, the big weapon is Mark Dempsey. It seems whenever he's impressed me since he's come over to Norway in coaching, often as Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's right-hand man, but he did a good job at Haugesund a couple of years ago, and then he fell out with the board. He coached at Man United for 10 years with the juniors, actually, John. I mean, he's got great big club experience, and he's one of those managers that he's quite controversial, actually. He'll tell it how it is. They've signed some exciting talent, especially I like the look of Kevin Cabran. We're going to talk about him a little bit later, but I think pretty much half their team is going to be new signings, which you've got to do when you come up sometimes. So forget about what they did last year. It's a new identity. And I think, definitely a dark horse. I think
they've got a really nice blend now, actually, between they've got some really good youngsters there, really exciting youngsters. Christensen, Alfez and Hudic have all really impressed over the recent times. And they also have some very good experienced players, Simon Larsen and Håkon Opdal, who have been there and done it before. So they've got a really nice blend of the two that you need. I think the only question mark is how quickly the signings can settle. I don't think they're going to start the season well, because I think they're still trying to find their own identity in terms of, I think Mark is still trying to find exactly the way he wants to play. But I do think that come May, June, and particularly after the summer break, I do think they will push up the table. And I agree that they will probably be comfortably safe, I think.
Yeah, I think quite a few people are, in the know seem to sort of be rating Start, which is an interesting one. Let's move straight to the bottom of the table. I mean, your predicted position for Start, by the way, there, Steve, is 9th. So it does seem like you've also tipped them to go fairly well. But right at the bottom of the table, we've got Ranheim, which is your bottom of the league prediction, Steve, and Trondheim second team. What is your take on Ranheim?
I've got to be honest here, John. They're the team I know least about. Ranheim have never been at this level, I don't think, before. They're from Trondheim, so sort of like a little brother of Rosenborg, really. They defied all the odds by winning the relegation playoff against Sogndal last season, which hardly ever happens. The Eliteserien side usually will win that playoff match easily. They're really a complete minnow. I don't know an awful lot about their players, to be honest. They've signed some guys that I've heard of before and I've seen in action from like Rosenborg youngsters and things like that. I'm struggling to get a big take on them, to be honest. I think Tom might know a little bit more about them from last season, and I'm guessing not an awful lot will change about their style from last season, really, either. So what do you think, Tom?
No, they're very. You're right saying they are complete minnow. Like this is like the equivalent of when Blackpool got to the Premier League years ago. Like no one expected it. They should never have been anywhere near the playoffs, let alone promotion. The one thing they have got in their favour is they have a very good spine. Evan Barley, who's the goalkeeper, he's hands down the best goalkeeper in the Obusliga last year. So that's a very good start. They have a centre back, Christian Rismark, who was their captain last year. He's very solid, and they're very, very good defensively as a team. They're very compact. They're very organised. They're very difficult to break down. They have a good mixture of pace and height, and a lot of their success last year came from 1-0 wins. They have Mads Reginersen, who's captain this year. He's been sought after by a lot of Eliteserien clubs over the previous 12, 18 months. So it was a big surprise for him to still be at Ranheim last year. And then I think there was no doubt then that when Ranheim went up, he was going to stay. So they have got some good players in their squad that can handle this level. The big question mark is going to be the players around them then, how strong they're going to be. I mean, a lot of their signings have come from the lower leagues. I had two of them in Stjørdalsblink when I was there 2 years ago. So they have a striker called Mads Lillebo, who scored 8-9 goals as a striker, sort of in and out the team. But he works extremely hard. He's got a terrific engine in him, runs the channels very well. And they signed another player this year, Myers Ogdal, who's more of a technical type who plays on the wing or plays down the middle. But a lot of their signs, as you say, have come from Rosenborg's reserve side or second and third division. So, and again, those signings have been players that they're not young players. They're 25, 26, 27, 28. So they're experienced players having played at a lower level. So I fear for them if their key players get injured, but they've got this far against all odds, and like I said, they're going to be tough to break down. So they're capable of nicking games, I think.
They haven't looking at their squad, it's entirely Norwegian, so it's a 100% Norwegian makeup from what I can see. That was.
It's not even just Norwegian; it's local. Like a lot of the players are from Trondheim. If you look at all of their recruitment in the last 2 years, they haven't signed anybody from outside of Trondheim. They haven't moved anyone from elsewhere in Norway or anything like that. And every one of the Ranheim players are part-time players. So the goalkeeper's a teacher, another one's a security guard, another one's a driving instructor. So they are the complete minnows. They're not even minnows. They're complete minnows. But the biggest thing they have in their favour is that everyone has written them off. So, they have nothing to lose, absolutely nothing. And they have a lot of hungry players there that know that if they perform this year as a team, then it can lead to their dream of being professional football players.
Steve has them as rank bottom of the table, and the team he has as 15th is a team that is, I've got to be honest, I've got a little bit of a soft spot for there, and that is Kristiansund. The reason for my soft spot for this team is Steve, I remember you on the last season of the podcast writing them off week after week, and they would come back and they gave Rosenborg a bit of a bloody nose, and they won me over with their sort of underdog style, and they managed to stay up. So I want you to kind of have you got an apology there for Kristiansund, Steve? And
fair play to them. They actually survived. They weren't lucky or anything like that. They played really well. So well done. But I always have this worry about sort of second season syndrome slump. It's interesting to know. I did a bit of research. Just 2 of the last 13 teams that got promoted to this league have actually gone down. So it's a great record for teams that have come straight up. But the second season can often be the tough season, John. I mean, it can be in all leagues, can't it? I was looking at a few stat sites. There's a suggestion that they overachieved a lot last year, Kristiansund, for what, certainly the final finishing position. By all accounts, they probably should have gone down statistically. And this is my concern. Can they repeat what happened? I mean, every home match last year was full of energy, passion, really tough place to go. It always seems to rain in Kristiansund. I didn't ever see a game where it was sunny there. It must be just a horrible place to live weather-wise. And it can be a tough place to visit. Look, they might easily prove me wrong and survive again, but they're definitely going to be in the relegation mixer, John.
Well, we did have a conversation on Twitter, and you can follow us at Nordic Foot Pod, talking about which team I would, as an outsider, support in Norway this season. I have to say Kristiansund are one that they have caught my eye a little bit. Looking at their squad makeup, it's very different to Ranheim there. They've got a blend of sort of Norwegian, Swedish. I see a couple of Estonians there in their squad as well, and an Ivorian and Dauda Bamba. What can you say that's positive about this Kristiansund side?
Well, one of my 10 players to watch is Turgil Gertsen, who he came into the squad mid-season, signed from Ranheim, actually, from the Obos-ligaen, and his statistics, were superb. I think he started 11 games and he scored 8 goals and had 4 assists, which is sensational stuff. So he was a key player, really, in getting them to survive. But the big thing about them isn't so much individual quality. It's just the team itself worked really well together. Dauda Bamba up front, I think, will go fairly well for them this season. I actually preferred John Alassane Mendy myself. But towards the back end of last year, he wasn't starting games anyway. So he maybe won't be such a big miss. They're going to have to perform really well as a team again, John, if they want to stay up.
Tom, I'm going to ask you for a one-word answer here. Will Kristiansund stay up, yes or no?
Via the playoff.
Right, so yes. Is that a yes?
Yes.
They will stay up via the playoffs. And Steve, you have them to go down. Well, we'll be looking at that one with interest. I'm definitely hoping they can bloody a few noses again this season, and I'll be keeping a firm eye on them. Let's move on to now your prediction for third from bottom, 14th of the table. You have Sandefjord.
Yeah, well, there's been a big off-season change in that Lars Bohinen has moved to Alsund, the manager. He's been replaced by Magnus Powell. Bohinen was a big part of Sandefjord's success, getting them promoted twice and surviving last year. They only survived by one position, but realistically, they were safe for quite some time. They just didn't finish the season very well, which you could say is a slight concern anyway. They haven't had a good pre-season. I think they've got hit for 6 twice. You can't take an awful lot from pre-season results, but for me, it's a concern when you are conceding that many goals. And when you got a new manager in charge, I was surprised because they're quite a tight-knit community there at Sandefjord, and they had a couple of really good assistant coaches who I actually thought one of those might get the job, to be honest, John. And maybe that would have been a better option. It's interesting that Magnus Powell is the favourite with the bookmakers to be first out of a job this season. And you know what? Maybe it could happen. If he doesn't get a good start, he's going to be under some pressure, isn't he? So I think they're going to be in the relegation mix of Sandefjord. Just like Kristiansund, they've got this second season sort of syndrome they've got to overcome, which might be a challenge. They might just about keep their head above water. I think there's enough quality in that squad. But I think at times it'll be a struggle, to be honest, John.
Yeah, and looking at their kind of numbers from last season, it's looking like they did just about enough. And, they got a few players, Castrati, I think, who did quite well, I believe, and Solberg maybe, Poamora as well. Tom, do you think they will be third from bottom? Do you think they're going to be a candidate to go down, or do you agree with Steve there?
I think they're going to struggle. I think they've had a really indifferent pre-season. I think there's a lot of things that we don't know about yet that might come out later. I think it's very interesting that they haven't signed that many players, considering the players they've lost. I think it's very interesting that the players that have left, including Lars Boehm. I think that was a very interesting decision to leave. I think he knew that he wasn't going to get anything else out of the squad that they had, whether that's because of not being able to strengthen or things running their course. So I'm a little bit worried for them, I have to say. But what I will say is Magnus Powell he is obsessive as a coach. I've met him a few times. He's very intense. He works 20 hours a day, and so if he struggles, it won't be for the want of trying.
Very interesting that. Thank you, Tom. Yes, so I suppose that's the relegation battle covered now. We've got the predictions Steve has Ranheim bottom of the league, Christiansen second bottom, Sandefjord in 14th, Bodo in 13th, and Tromsø 12th, with IK Start, a newly promoted side, all the way up in 9th. We're going to move on now to players to watch. I've asked Steve on this preview show to provide 10 players who he feels will be key in the Eliteserien and maybe even attract other clubs abroad perhaps, or move on to bigger things as others have done. Steve, we don't have a huge amount of time here, so let's run through your list. Give us your 10 names firstly, and then we'll delve into a few of them very briefly.
Well, I've given you a mixture here of names. Some are promising talent who can really develop and perhaps even unheard of for some listeners. And then I've gone with some obvious ones as well. But here's the list. Samuel Adegbenro, Eirik Ulland Andersen, Gilbert Koomsen, Turgil Gertsen, Kevin Cabran, Hugo Vettelsen, Runar Espejord, Per Christian Brathwaite, Marcus Kassa, and Leo Ostergaard. What is the breakdown in terms of clubs? I think it's one club. Everyone is at a different club, am I right in saying? Yeah, I mean, I tried to mix it up a bit, so get someone from each club. I mean, just start with Adegbenro and Andersen. It's pretty obvious. I think Adegbenro is in for a really, really big breakout season, especially when Rosenborg start to play European matches in the summer. He could really catch the eye on the European stage there and probably end up with a move in the summer window. He's really, really good. He's better than this league, and he'll move on, I think. Andersen, if Strømsgodset are going to actually launch this title bid and come close to Rosenborg as I think they might do, then he's going to have to really become one of the top 2 or 3 in the league now in terms of player quality. And I think he's got that in him. Some great statistics last year. He's already one of the top players in the Eliteserien. Now I think he's ready to move into that top 3 or 4 bracket. So for those two, it's pretty obvious.
Tom, how many of those players are you familiar with yourself? And is there anyone you hear that stands out to you?
I think that first and foremost, that's a very, very good list. I'm slightly disappointed there's no Bodo Glimt players on there, but we'll take that at a later date. I think they're all very interesting for their own reasons. Hugo from Stabæk, I'm very, very interested to see. I think he's in for a really, really good year this year, and he's obviously got the perfect coach with Tony as his coach. And Leo Ostergaard, I'm very interested to see how close to the first team he gets. Massive reviews of him down in Molde. They've won the National Youth Cup 2 years in a row, and he's been a very big part of that. So I really hope for his sake that he manages to take the step into the first team. Yes,
and then we've got Gilbert Koomsen of Brann. We've got, as we've mentioned there, Gertsen of Christiansen, Hugo Vettelsen from Stabæk, Runar Espejord from Tromsø, Brathwaite from Haugesund, Marcus Kassa from Odd. So yeah, a real eclectic mix there of players. One keeper as well, and several wingers. Tom, who would you say is maybe a player you're looking forward to that's maybe not part of the Bodo setup? Is there anyone we should keep our eye on from your point of view? Maybe 1 or 2 names that you predict to have a breakout or exceptional season?
I think there'll be one from start. I think Christiansen's obviously been one that's been in and around for a long time, and I think there was one pre-season friendly they played where all 3 of the central midfielders were 18 years old. So I certainly think there'll be one of the 3 from start that make a breakthrough, particularly with Dempsey as their coach. I also think Anders Sørlund could be an interesting one from Sandefjord. I know he's been linked with Odd recently in a transfer, and I know that Powell really wants to keep him down in Sandefjord, but I think he's another one that could be very, very interesting and really put a stamp on this season.
Fascinating stuff. Yeah, I think we're going to leave it there. That's all we have time for now on the Nordic Football Podcast. The season preview's done. Tom, if we ever find ourselves, in the region of Bodo, what's the most exciting thing to do there besides watching the team? Is there anything touristy that we should look out for, or will we be welcome down the training ground to visit you?
Well, of course, you're always welcome to come and say hello. The most interesting things normally happen in the evening. Actually, we're very famous in the north for having Northern Lights. And that's I cannot put into words how brilliant a thing that is to see. The nightlife's pretty good. I won't say it is quite bubbly. And no, there's a lot of really nice nature and things around in and outside the town that are definitely worth seeing.
Well, it's been fantastic having you on the show, Tom. And yeah, really good insight there. Appreciate your time. It's going to be an interesting season, that's for sure. We'll be on the Nordic Football Podcast regularly throughout the season. So, perhaps we'll have you back on the show if possible at some point further down the line as well.
Would be a pleasure.
Yeah, and Steve, thanks for your predictions there. Thank you very much for listening, and goodbye.
Thanks very much, Tom, for coming on. See you all next time, everyone.